What is up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to Gauchos After Dark, recapping another Saturday across the Big 12 like we do every Saturday night. We were treated to some Big 12 After Dark with Oklahoma State going to play in Tempe. They come away with a dub. We'll talk about that. Feel free to request to speak if you've got questions, comments, concerns, complaints, anything of that variety about any Big 12 team. We're here for all of it. Texas Tech fans tuning in, we will do our Oregon recap episode tomorrow. And so we'll try to stay away from that tonight, and we'll dive into that tomorrow. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll get to as many speakers as possible. And as always, Gauchos After Dark is brought to you by our friends over at Barnett, Howard & Williams Law Firm, bhwlawfirm.com if you want to learn more about their services. I guess let's start with the late night one that just wrapped up. Oklahoma State gets the win in Tempe. It wasn't pretty in the first half, but the defense holds the Sun Devils scoreless in the second half. Looks like they're maybe starting to whittle down who their quarterback is going to be. It just, from my perception, seems like Bowman is maybe the odd man out, and it'll be between Gundy and Rangel going forward. Seems like they have some good running backs, so maybe they're starting to find their identity offensively. But yeah, they get to 2-0. Jackson, did you have anything specific you wanted to comment on, or?
Just a couple of teams impressed me today. K-State took care of business. Kansas obviously took care of business last night. I think Tech showed some fight. Texas obviously proved they're front runners by far. But I do think the QB competition for Oak State has to come down to Rangel and Gundy right now.
Yeah, agreed. So around the Big 12, so Kansas State beats Troy. They cover there. Oklahoma wins and covers against SMU. I think, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I think those are the only two that have not played a Power 5 opponent yet. So maybe we still have a little bit more to learn about Kansas State and Oklahoma, but so far so good for both of them. And yeah, Texas gets, obviously far and away the biggest win, not only in the Big 12, probably in college football this weekend.
If I
Going on the
can
road.
give a slight shout out to West Virginia, they're close with the FCS opponent and they just blew them out of the water after the delay.
Yeah. So Texas, I don't know. I feel like everybody was waiting for them to fall flat with all the preseason hype. But hey, you win in Tuscaloosa, and you're legit in my eyes. So I think, like you said, definitely solidified themselves as the conference front runner. And now it's a matter of can they sustain that and make it through conference play unscathed.
Since he also went on the road and beat Pitt, so they
Yeah,
deserve a shout out as well.
Yeah, so them, Oklahoma State and Texas all go on the road and beat a Power 5 opponent. And Cincinnati, kind of the opposite of Texas, a team that did not come in with a lot of expectations. They're making the jump to the Power 5, a first-year head coach, lost all sorts of production from last year. And they looked really good against Eastern Kentucky week 1, but you take that with a grain of salt because it's an FCS team. Well, they go on the road to a Power 5 team in Pitt and handle their business. They were 7-point underdogs. They went outright by 6. And so I think they're a team that is maybe starting to get some attention. Like, I don't know. I think the expectation coming into the season was like, hey, if we can make a bowl game, we'll be happy. And seems like they're pretty well on track for that, at least based on early returns.
Yeah, Emory Jones looks legit for them.
Yeah, he does. He's a good quarterback for Satterfield's system, I think. So we'll see how they do getting into Big 12 play, but that's a huge win for the Bearcats. You mentioned a couple teams that played FCS opponents. TCU handles Nichols. West Virginia handles Duquesne.
I will say on TCU, their fans were not happy today.
Yeah, I kind of saw. I didn't catch any of the game because it was on at the same time as Texas Tech. But
yeah, I don't care about that game. But their fans
the sentiment
seemed
on Twitter was like, yeah, it wasn't always pretty, but it turned out 41-6, which looks like a good score against an FCS team. But like we know how those games can go sometimes. And then I think the last FCS game from this weekend was BYU over Southern Utah. Looks like the offense woke up a little bit compared to their performance against Sam Houston State in Week 1. So maybe they're a little bit rusty or something. I know it's an FCS opponent, but they looked better today on that side of the ball for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like Tech going into next week. They need a big performance, and BYU needed one. Their defense obviously looked legit last week, but their offense showing up helps them a lot.
Yeah, and then not quite a Power Five road win, but UCF wins in Boise. I think they only scored one touchdown. I was kind of surprised that their offense sort of went a little bit flat, but they do wind up winning. Didn't quite cover. They won by 2. I think they were 3 or 3.5 most places. I was really high on them after their first game against Kent State, and now I guess I've backed off of that a little bit.
I would disagree with you there. I think any FBS win week 1 that looks as dominant as they did looks good. And Boise is a tough place to play, like it is in the elevation. And they
Yeah,
also wore their all blue uniforms on blue turf. Like we're nitpicking, but I'm trusting UCF so far.
yeah. I don't think they're like fraudulent or anything, but I was expecting them to cover, and like if they did win that game by 10 or 14, I would have been like, okay, yeah, these guys are legit, and they still might be. I just think they left a little bit of meat on the
Yeah,
bone. Um, but
that's
yeah,
fair.
it's still a good win. Any road win in Boise, I mean, yeah, I think you'll take that for sure. Um, all right, let's start in the state of Texas and kind of work our way around. We covered Texas, TCU. Like I said, we'll kind of go over Texas Tech versus Oregon tomorrow. But very surprising 0-2 start for Baylor. So I think our friends in Waco are experiencing some of what we're feeling as Texas Tech fans. They lose a tough one to Utah, and I actually respect that they bounced back from a really bad loss against Texas State Week 1. They led for a good portion of the game. They had the ball with the game tied up, and a pretty bad interception gave Utah the ball back. They scored, and then I'm interested for your thoughts. I thought that um, that was an obvious pass interference on the last play of the game, and that they should have been given an untimed down at the end there.
So I cannot feel pity for Baylor after 2019, but yes, that was PI, 100%.
Yeah. So I don't. Do you know how long Shapen was supposed to be out for?
I don't. I personally, I don't think it matters. I think Robinson and Shapen are practically the same guy, except I think Robinson has a better upside.
Well, I was mostly curious just from the angle of Texas Tech going to Waco in I think 4 weeks. I think his timeline is shorter than that, so we'll probably see Shapen.
He'll be back by then. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be short
So
term, 1, 2, 3 weeks.
okay. Well, they have Long Island next week, so probably aren't going to rush him back for that one unless he's for sure 100%. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm surprised. Obviously, that they're 0-2. I think that they viewed obviously the Texas State win or the Texas State game is winnable, and I think a lot of their fan base felt really good about playing Utah, especially without Cam Rising. And so, I don't know. I think we're, like I said, sort of in the same place as a lot of Baylor fans in terms of the early season gut punch of starting 0-2 and one game that you thought was really winnable, and then another versus a good Power Five opponent that playing it at home you thought you had a decent chance of winning.
I will say,
Um,
Baylor and TCU, I kind of feel like week 1 they were in the same boat because CU was they completely flipped every player on the roster, and Texas State honestly wasn't too far behind. They didn't have much to study. Then when you see they have something to study against Utah, they actually played pretty well. I don't think Baylor's a dead horse yet.
yeah, I don't think so either, and I don't know. I guess we'll see. But yeah, a disappointing start for a fellow in-state Big 12 team. And kind of interesting too that just by coincidence, three of the four corner schools all play Big 12 opponents this year. So we had the Utah Baylor game, Oklahoma State, Arizona State, and then week one TCU Colorado. And so I guess Arizona is the odd man out for now. But I thought that was kind of a fun angle to that. Is we get a glimpse at how the newcomers will stack up against the existing Big 12 teams, and some of those same matchups might be played again next year as conference games.
Hey Kyle, do you think the Holy War will be played next year?
Surely, I mean, I'd have to think. However, they wind up doing the pods or protected rivalries. I mean, you'd think that they'd make sure that one is played every year. Um, so yeah, looking forward to that for sure because they don't play this year, do they?
No, they do not.
Yeah, yeah. I think that immediately becomes a top three rivalry in the new Big 12. Like, I could hear an argument for the Revivalry, for the Territorial Cup, um, maybe Kansas State, but like Kansas hasn't been good enough at football recently for that to feel like a true rivalry. So yeah, I mean, I think Holy War is probably top two, maybe the best rivalry in the new Big 12 um, right off the bat. So looking forward to that for sure. Um, okay, we talked a little bit about OU handling business against SMU. Lower scoring than I thought it would be. Um, and even though SMU isn't a Power Five opponent, at least until next year when they join the ACC, which makes so much sense, um, their defense looks like it has improved over last year. Like SMU's a pretty good offense, and they hold them to just 11 points. So
I
the offense kind of seems like they took a step back this week, but defense a step forward.
I will say I think Rice was just kind of PO'd that they are the only SWC team not in Power Five right now, and just decided to kick Houston's butt tonight.
Yeah, shoot, I forgot about Houston. I was working my way up I-35 there, but yeah, Houston falls down 28-0 to Rice, and then forces it all the way to double overtime, and they lose on a 2-point conversion. And I don't know. I thought the line was suspect when Houston. I think it opened like 9.5, and I thought anything less than 10 was sort of weird. And then it went down throughout the week. I think it closed at like 8, and I was just like, I mean, surely Houston can handle Rice by more than 10 points. So it goes to show you what Vegas knows compared to an idiot like me. But I was very surprised that game was as close as it was, and that's a that's a tough loss for Dana. Like I think the UTSA win was huge because that was a big time sort of like toss up matchup for their bowl eligibility prospects for in-state recruiting stuff. Felt like they had some momentum, and then it just kind of all goes away with a loss to Rice. So that's tough for them.
Kyle, you're not an idiot. You shouldn't call yourself that.
Compared to the sports books, I think they've got a better track record than I do. But yeah, tough loss for Houston, and that's where you start to look around for Texas Tech. And I don't want to harp on the Red Raiders too much. It does look like they have a somewhat favorable start to Big 12 play. Like as rough as the non-con has been, you start on the road in Morgantown. That's never easy, but I think West Virginia is a team that is still very beatable. Then you come home to play Houston, which last week I thought, okay, they might be better than some folks expected, and then they dropped the game to Rice, and they're kind of back to me thinking they're lower, third or fourth of the conference. So I don't know. Maybe Texas Tech is primed for a rebound once conference play starts. Um, Kansas, you alluded to that. They win a Power Five game against Illinois. They were actually favored by 3 and covered that, and probably let off the gas a little bit. I think it was like 34-7 or 34-10 at one point, and then Illinois scored when the game was out of hand to make it more like 34-23 or whatever the final was. But they looked impressive, and obviously a good sign that Jalen Daniels' injury didn't linger too badly. So I think they're going to be a tough out in Big 12 play for a lot of teams.
How do you feel about CU coming here next year? 'Cause, 'Because they look like a piece.
Yeah, they look good. Shedeur Sanders looks really good. I almost don't even know if he'll be there next year. I think he's got good enough measurables to be in the NFL and looks like he has a pro arm. So if the production is there, which it certainly looks like it's going to be, I mean, he had 500 yards week one. He had, I think, almost 400 today. Like, I don't know if he winds up with 4,500 yards this year and he's got the NFL arm and NFL measurables. I don't know why he would stay. Like, he'd have nothing left to prove. Um, but I would love to play him and Coach Prime next year, especially in Lubbock. You know, I just think they're so much fun and it's so good for the sport right now to have that spotlight. So
I will agree. I
I love
work
it.
in Boulder. It's more hype than it's ever been. But how do you feel about our week 3 starter for Texas Tech? Do you think that Dion will poach him?
Uh, do what now?
Do you think Dion's going to poach Barrymore
Do I think
week
Dion's
3
gonna?
starter?
Is he gonna come get Morton? um, I don't know. That would be kind of wild. Um, yeah, I guess I don't see that happening. But in today's portal era, who knows? Um, you're listening to Gaucho's After Dark, presented by Barnett, Howard, and Williams, law firm based in Fort Worth, but they handle cases all across the state of Texas. BHWLawFirm.com. Big Hen, I see you're on the mic as well. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I want to hire Barnett, Howard, and Williams to. I want to sue Zach Kelly for not letting Taj Brooks run the ball more, and Tarleton is my Super Bowl.
Are we? Have we turned the page? We're focused on Tarleton now.
The Oregon was a look ahead game. We were too focused on Tarleton.
Can you tell Big Ken to get his ass out of the dang living room and go outside with you?
Yeah. Hey, so quick peek behind the curtain for all of our listeners. We're all at an Airbnb right now in Lubbock, and y'all just kind of spoiled the element of suspense there. I'm outside on the porch. They're inside, apparently fighting over couch cushions in the living room. So, very professional operation we have going on here during Gaucho's After Dark. We're almost done. The Iowa State Cyclones, their Cyhawk streak ends at 1. Matt Campbell finally got over the hump last year. Only 4-point dogs this year. I thought maybe they would have a shot to win at home and couldn't quite get it done. That's always a tough game for them, at least in recent history. You know, I think Campbell lost the first 7 or 8 maybe against Iowa before notching that win. So I don't put too much stock into that. You know, it's a tough game for them. They've lost it before and then gone on to, win 6 games in the Big 12. You know, I think they still do certainly have a lot of question marks, and it would have been a great win for them in terms of building momentum. But I'm also not willing to count the Cyclones out just yet. What do you think about them, Jackson?
Yeah, I'm not quitting on the Cyclones yet. I personally, I mean, I have some horrors from '05 with Northern Iowa, and they beat them. And I was kind of scared for them week 3 against Ohio. I'm not scared anymore. I was worried they could go 0-12 potentially. That's obviously not going to be the case, and they are going to win some Big 12 games.
I think that's about right. And if they do beat Ohio, which is doable but not certain, I think a 2-1 start in non-con play, given what they experienced at the end of the offseason this summer, I think they all would have taken that and then
Yeah.
kind of rolled the dice trying to get to bowl eligibility in Big 12 play.
I
So,
can personally guarantee you every single Cyclone fan would have traded a loss to Ohio for a win against Iowa. But
yeah.
I think they are potentially a better team than they were last year. Like Cyclone Larry was talking crap about Hunter Deckers. He may have been right. He may have been right.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. I don't know if Ohio is the ultimate litmus test, but yeah, 2 or 3 Big 12 games in, we'll know if their offense has a little bit more juice than it did last year. I think that covers anybody. Did we miss any
And
Big 12 team or Big
well,
12 game?
remember their defense is not going anywhere. Like
Right. Yeah, that's the tricky part. They can be terrible on offense and still make it a really good game in the fourth quarter. Did we miss anybody in Big 12 country?
I think OU kind of deserves a shout out. I thought SMU would test them today, and they did not. I I think that OU deserves a bit of a shout out. As much as I hate them, and Emmett Jones is a leap, but
I mean, they did cover. I do think they, like I said, I was surprised that one was as low scoring as it was, and I think it was a bit of a struggle into like the middle portion of the game. But yeah, when you're a huge favorite, 15.5 or whatever they were, and you cover, you can't really complain. So, and that, the Red River game is now with Texas over the hump against Alabama, and OU seeming like at the very least they're improved over last season. That could be a really good matchup in Dallas here in a few weeks.
so all
And
off season, I was hoping that OU or Texas would win that game, so we could knock OU out of the Big 12 title race Black Friday. I kind of hope OU wins that, so we can knock Texas out of the playoff race.
potentially, I mean, I would love to beat Texas and Austin no matter the Big 12 title circumstances, but that would be a very fun storyline to send them on their way in their last Big 12 game for sure. Jackson, a game I used to play with Rob is guess the opening line for next weekend's Big 12 slate. Sure, there's already some look aheads out there, but probably very low limit type openings. I haven't seen any. Do you want to talk through some
Let's get
potential opening
after it.
lines?
Let's go.
So, first big one, and I'll only do FBS versus FBS, but Kansas State goes on the road to Columbia, Missouri. Any thoughts on the opening line there?
K-State -5.5.
Okay, I was thinking a little more snug. I'm thinking like K-State -1
No matter what, K-State's
or
going to cover.
1.5, something like that. But yeah, that'll be a good game. Missouri's going to want revenge from
Yeah.
last season, and I think they're roughly even. Like that should be a very competitive game.
Somewhat, but K-State has passed every test so far.
True. The aforementioned Iowa State at Ohio, kind of strange road game there, but I guess this was a home and home from last year. Any guesses on Iowa State, Ohio?
So Iowa State's going to be favored, but their offense isn't that good. I could see 6.5. I could even see as low as 3.5 here.
Yeah, I was gonna guess a touchdown. So you and I are very close on your initial. I think it'll be a low total, but then 6.5 or a touchdown spread for the Cyclones. A few more here on Gauchos After Dark, sponsored by Barnett, Howard, and Williams. A big in-state rivalry. Oklahoma is playing at Tulsa. I kind of can't believe that they agreed to do that. I think it'll be Oklahoma minus, let's call it 20.5.
I think that's about right. And, okay, can I go on a 30-second rant?
Sure.
So, Oklahoma is willing to play at Tulsa. Texas has signed up to play UTSA and UTEP for a decade and will not play a single game on the road. In 08, they played on the road against UTEP, and that gave them road experience. But they're not going to do that at the Alamo Dome or at the Sun Bowl. I think that's ridiculous. Give them one road game. It also helps your team. You should win that game. You should get experience on the road. But that's just a personal opinion.
Well, and the flip side of that coin is like, okay, you're willing to go to Tulsa, but you won't renew the Bedlam series once it's a non-con game?
I think OU will. I think OSU is a bit kind of butthurt, which I don't blame them. Like, we're in the same boat as OSU. Like, okay, fine, you're gone. Let's go. Let's go find something else.
Yeah. And honestly, I said 20.5. It might be even more than that. It's hard to gauge on that lopsided.
Well, them beating SMU by this much could push it to like 23.5, 24.5, or something like that.
Yeah. An interesting game along those same lines of like in-state FBS matchups that one side doesn't really enjoy playing. Cincinnati is hosting Miami, Ohio.
Oh.
And from what I can gather from Cincy fans, they hate playing this game.
Oh. So one of my best friends since I moved to Denver, He played for Miami of Ohio. He was actually blind. He cannot see in the dark. I went out to the bar with him. He had a walking cane and everything, talking to me about the Ohio State Cincinnati matchups. This is a big game. I see 13.5 for Cincinnati.
I was going to guess like the other side of 14 there, like 14 and a half with a hook. So, yeah, I think we're on the same page there.
If
It's a
it's
matter of,
14.5, I'm taking Miami of Ohio. Like, this is
yeah.
a bitter game for those guys. This is,
Yeah, and
and
the
Cincinnati
all-time
passed the test
series
this
is,
week, but they're going to
yeah.
be hit by a team that hates them next week.
Yeah, and the all-time series, I think, is almost exactly 50-50. Like, people think of Cincinnati as being light years ahead as a program versus Miami. And, of course, some of those games were 50-plus years ago.
Yeah.
But I was surprised to learn that they're, like, this rivalry is actually pretty even historically. So,
Oh, these two teams hate each other. Cincinnati is going to be playing back-to-back rivalry games. Cincinnati was one of the teams I was iffy about adding, but having this wrinkle in there makes me love them.
yeah, agreed. Especially one day, too, if you are able to get some other old Big East teams from the ACC and, like, you put Pitt, Louisville on their schedule every year, that'd be super fun. The next one, South Alabama or Southern Alabama, I'm actually not sure which is
South
correct,
Alabama.
goes to South Alabama. They go to Stillwater, and I'm just not sure what to think of Oklahoma State at this point. I'll
Yeah.
guess maybe like a weird one between like 10 and 14, like a 12 or 11 and a half or something, like a weird tweener kind of spread.
So personally, for me, I do like Garrett Rangel. Oklahoma State, I don't think is a good football team, but I could see them going 8-4 this year. And South Alabama, I don't know enough about them, but they are Sun Belt. Sun Belt teams are always feisty, and they are not a bad Sun Belt team. I could see this one being 13.5, 10.5, and South Alabama covering. I think this is going to be a close game. Oklahoma State's obviously going to win, but I think South Alabama is going to cover no matter what the spread is.
Yeah, I could see it like not being a total blowout all the way through and like, kind of a semi-competitive game at halftime potentially. So this is a pretty big one. BYU goes to Fayetteville to play Arkansas.
Ooh,
Um, Arkansas did not look that good today against Kent State.
they don't have a QB. They're worse than UCF.
Yeah,
UCF
yeah.
just
I'm thinking like
blew Kent State out.
right. Yeah, I'm thinking this will be a very low total based on
Yes.
some of the offensive performances put out by both teams, and that could lend itself to a tighter spread than you would think with
Yep.
BYU going on the road to an SEC team.
100%.
I think it'll be like a hair under a touchdown, like maybe 6 for Arkansas.
I could see 6.5. I think at 6.5, I would take Arkansas, but if it's any more than that, I'm taking BYU. And at 6.5, I'm probably staying away from it.
Yeah. Probably the biggest game on the non-con slate, the Backyard Brawl, an incredible historic rivalry. It was in Pittsburgh last year, Pitt going to Morgantown this year.
So
I don't know. I would have thought Pitt, like, slight favorite before today, but they lose to Cincinnati. I think this one could be kind of snug. Like, I think Pitt will still be a slight road favorite, but I don't think it'll be more than a field goal.
So did you know that Pitt and Cincinnati actually have a rivalry game for both of them?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they've only played like 10 times over 100 years, but it is a rivalry. I like Garrett Green. I really do. I think that he's a dog. I think he's kind of like Tyler Shuck. He's not the guy, but I think he's a dog. If it is any lower than a touchdown, I am hammering West Virginia.
I think so too. I think their fans this is the one game that their fans just go all out for,
Yeah.
and it means more to them than any conference game. Like,
And remember, if it's not for a drop pass last year, they win that game.
Yeah, that pick six that they basically just like volleyed into the air. They absolutely win that game,
And I will
and
say,
it's
I
the first
just
time
looked it
in.
up. Pitt and Cincy have played 13 times, so I'm sorry for any Cincinnati fans I may have offended.
And this is the first time in Morgantown since the end of the Big East, basically. So like 2011, probably 2010, even perhaps.
Yeah, because also that 13-9 game. I know. I was researching this last year for Heartland, and West Virginia legitimately ended Pitt's natty hopes one time. But I think
Yeah,
13-9 game is still the most brutal game I've ever seen.
yeah. Wyoming at Texas.
Wyoming money line.
Oh, that would be so
Hey
poetic.
man, they focus too much out on Alabama, and those Wyoming suckers are feisty.
I think this will be around Texas minus 24.
I see 20.5.
Yeah.
And I think Wyoming could cover because their defensive line is pretty good. Their defense plays well. I mean, their DC can scheme you up. He's gonna have more film to scheme you up on. I think that Wyoming can keep it kind of close. Obviously, Texas is gonna win. They're gonna walk away feeling good, and they should. They're gonna be 3-0 after being Bama. But I think that Wyoming can keep it closer than most think.
I hope Wyoming takes them to the deep end of the pool. I'm not counting on it, but that would ease a lot of my early season heartache here.
Yeah. Why I wish that Tech could have taken Oregon to the deep end of the pool.
Same. We get the first Big 12 conference game next weekend
Thank
on
God.
Fox at 7 p.m. TCU at Houston.
Oh.
I think this is an opportunity for both teams. Like Houston wants to get the rice taste out of their
Yep.
mouth. No pun intended there. And TCU wants to prove, like, yeah, we can beat a Power 5 team. We didn't take advantage of that opportunity against Colorado and then an FCS team this week. It being in Houston, I think it might be kind of snug.
3.5.
I'll say, yeah, I was gonna say like TCU minus 4 on the
Okay.
road, but like not a huge favorite.
Yeah, I kind of agree. And the rice taste in your mouth. Rice is always awesome, especially in Texas. So no, there's no pun there. But yeah, I think it's gonna be 3.5. That game is a game I'm so excited about. I feel like whenever Big 12 play gets around, when we get that first game, because TCU is that weird one that they always have SMU in week 4. That's when I feel like football really starts. So, in other words, Texas Tech is 0-0.
Yeah, and I had some Mexican rice today out at Regino Barbecue. It was really good. But this is Gauchos After Dark, presented by Barnett, Howard, and Williams. Speaking of After Dark, we get another Big 12 After Dark opportunity not tomorrow night, next Saturday. Kansas goes on the road to Nevada. Nevada's 0-2.
Yeah.
But bit of a road trip there. I think Kansas should be favored by. I don't know. I know Kansas has been so much better the last few years. I'm hesitant to make them like some huge road favorite.
So, you
But
remember
I want to say,
Wildcat Willie that called in a few weeks ago?
yeah,
I think he's right about Kansas's secondary. I think they've come around. Like,
I
I think they have a
yeah.
good secondary now.
Like, are you bold enough to make Kansas like I
I
think a touchdown is too small, but would you do like 8.5? Is that too
No,
much?
I don't think that's too much at all. I was talking about whether I'm going to bet the over or the under, and the only thing that keeps me from betting the over on Williams or whatever, or sorry, I'm sorry, Jalen Daniels is that Kansas actually has a secondary now. But I
Yeah.
think 8.5 is a good line. I'd take Kansas at that.
I don't know if that will be the opening line. If it is, I wonder when the last time they were 8.5 point favorites on the road was, and then like specifically versus an FBS team, if they've probably never gone to an FCS opponent.
Can we
But
take a second and just talk about how Kansas has turned it around? CU has turned it around. Arizona, I think, has a great coach and they have a good quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Arizona State, we saw that today. They turned it around. Utah is obviously good. BYU's good. The Big 12 will have no bottom feeders next year.
I agree with you there. I think we're the conference with the most parity top to bottom, and like we won't have the blue chip like blue blood programs, but we're also, when we're a 16 team conference, team number 9 or 10 is still going to be like a really competitive team.
Team
So
15 may be a good team. Like
yeah,
Iowa State
which I
finished
love that. It makes it more fun.
last in the conference last year. Lost to the team that won the conference by 1.
Yeah,
That's how good
exactly
our
right.
conference is.
I'm looking forward to that. I think we'll be the most competitive of the Power 4 conferences, and
for sure.
Like, yeah, it has its drawbacks because you don't have an Ohio State or an Alabama to kind of be like the flag bearer, but we're not getting the TV money anyway, and so I just want to see competitive, interesting football games, and I think we're gonna have plenty of that.
Yeah, and Texas Tech's gonna beat Texas's butt on Black Friday, so it don't matter either way.
I love the optimism. We will leave it there on Gauchos After Dark. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Again, we do this every Saturday night after the Big 12 slate wraps up, and just kind of go around the horn talking about different Big 12 teams and what they do every college football Saturday. We'll be back with a Texas Tech versus Oregon preview tomorrow night, or I guess tonight. It's Sunday morning. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you to Barnett, Howard, and Williams for sponsoring Gauchos After Dark, and we will talk to you again next week. Love y'all.
Love you too.